Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, the clauses 1 and 2 in the legislation, of course, refer to title and commencement, and these are often debated in a lively fashion, and members suggest alternative titles, perhaps in some cases that the legislation should never come into effect, and I don't intend to debate the timing around this bill because while we disagree with the introduction of the Henry VIII clause, we in principle support the introduction of a fairer means of collecting it. As my colleague Andrew Little has alluded to, the attempt to make sure that all types of income are more fairly measured when repayments are made is something that we will support. I do, however, have a few suggested changes to the title to more fairly reflect some of what happens in the bill, and I put them forward as suggestions. The first, Mr Chair, is that this could be called the fingers crossed we can implement it bill, because this bill is a bill which makes very clear, lays asunder the challenges that IRD is facing in terms of implementing legislation because of its decrepit computer system. The computer system at IRD, as we know, is 20 years old, and the department has over 1 million returns that remain unprocessed and over $7 billion in outstanding tax. And those things all hint at, rather loudly, at a computer system that is struggling, that needs to be updated, and we have a government that seems to have been very reluctant to actually lay out a timetable, a credible plan for replacing the system, despite not being the only country in the Western world that needs a functioning tax system. This government has been asleep at the wheel when it comes to bringing the tax system up to date so that we can support the schools and hospitals and other things that are done through a fully functioning tax system. So, Mr Chair, my first suggested title is the fingers crossed we can implement it bill. And if I read from the description at the start of the Act, we can see very clearly that the provision for the relief for small amounts of loan obligations is needing to be adjusted. Under the Student Loan Scheme Act 1992, repayment obligations under $20 were not collected and were written off. And the 2011 Act changed this so that small amounts remain part of a borrower's loan balance for future collection. And this was one of the changes this government brought in. And now that the scheme will continue to be administered under the IRD's current computer system, it's been decided that it is not cost effective to go down that path. And so this bill reinstates the discretion to write off small obligations under $20. So we have a perfectly good provision that's been there for years. Then the government says, right, we'll update it, we'll make it a bit more modern. And then it decides, well, actually, we've got a fair way down the track and we can't do it. The computer system simply will not cope with this little change. It's not cost effective to do it. And so this bill, aside from introducing those fairness components, is also covering up a whole lot of humiliating backdowns that are slipped in there for things that this computer system cannot implement. The bill itself is a vehicle for getting all of those changes back through that amend, repeal decisions made by the government previously. Mr Bennett down the back is interjecting, but I can't hear what he's saying, so I shall ignore him. My colleague tells me I haven't missed a thing. But my second title, Mr Chair, that I would suggest is that this is the small steps towards fairness bill, covering over these humiliating backdowns, because more generally there are other backdowns in this bill. In fact, most of, well, not most, but a good half, no, actually the majority of the explanatory material at this bill, in the front of this bill, is about other backdowns, reprioritisations as a result of not being able to be implemented. So this bill recognises that some of the changes to the administration of the scheme originally provided for in the Student Loan Scheme Act 2011 would be too complicated to implement within the Inland Revenue Department's current computer system and should therefore not proceed. So this is the heading which explains the remaining humiliating backdowns that are in there. So and describes 4 measures. Mr Chair.
Dr David Clark.
Mr Chair, so that introduces 4 measures that are provided for in the 2011 Act that should be cancelled. I've already covered the relief for small amounts of loan obligations. In there as well is the loan interest calculation method, which becomes problematic and must be adjusted. And it says that as the bill was introduced with clause 54, it would change the interest calculation method in 2 ways, effective from 1 April 2013. And this then suggests that, by way of amendments, clause 54 is removed from the bill to retain the existing loan interest regime, and also makes related amendments. The payment calculation, the removal of clause 59 in the bill as introduced, in order to retain the existing way in which payments are allocated to repayment obligations and debt. Again, too complex to administer. And then further on, there are some amendments which line up adjusted net income so that are broadly aligned with the definition of income under Working for Families tax credits. And finally, Mr Chair, the other suggested title that I might recommend is the Student Loan ZAR Creation Amendment Bill, because this bill introduces a Henry VIII clause, for goodness sake, to manage future changes should there be more embarrassing backdowns required. So in future, when these kind of embarrassing backdowns that I've just listed come up, the government has a provision in this legislation so that it doesn't need to bring them back to Parliament. When the computer system can't implement them, the government can, behind the scenes, change the regulations and say, well, it was roughly in line with what we were intending to do. No need to put this out to public. We've realised that we can't do it because we haven't yet committed to building a proper tax system, proper tax computer system. We're still struggling along with the old one. We're not doing our job very well, and we will at some stage announce some changes, but we haven't got round to it yet. And so on we go. We'll give it a go, but actually we need these ZAR-like powers in case we can't actually manage it. Now, Mr Chair, this is an embarrassing bill for the government in the sense that it's had to bring about a bill that has some useful data matching principles in it and some useful broadening of the definition of income, but really it's a vehicle by and large for a number of embarrassing backdowns. So these other suggested titles are up there for consideration. I guess I'm not putting any false modesty out there when I say it's unlikely these titles will get adopted, but I think that they illustrate some of the limitations in this bill and some of the limitations in this government's thinking. We really do need, as a country, a functioning tax system. We need to get past the situation we have where, in the last GST filing period last year, in the middle of the year, 70,000 phone calls went unanswered at the IRD, where $7 billion in tax revenue remains outstanding. Mr Chair, I come back to the title. These things, one of the suggested titles is the humiliating backdown title, and Mr Chair, I put it to you that really there is a humiliating situation at IRD that is caused by the inadequacy of this computer system, and that is the point that I am making, because right now that department is unable to do its job properly, and it is actually to do with a lack of government planning around replacement of this computer system. It's no small beer. We're talking $1 billion here in terms of replacement cost, and we have not yet seen from this government a credible plan to replace that tax system, and no timeline. This government is sitting on its hands. John Key's talked about it over eons. We've seen no action, and it's typical of a government that's taken its eye off the ball and its hands off the wheel, and the economy in New Zealand is suffering.
I call the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Oh, Mr Chairman, fortuitous, spontaneous eruption in support of this bill, sir. And the titling committee